Hi, Data Ben here. Today we're going to cover the if statement, and we're going to do that by looking at the Excel colour palette. So we've created a little tool here. So the VBA code is already set up. So if I click on Get Colour Info, we'll actually get some results generated from the VBA, which I'll show shortly, which tells us the name of the colour, the colour index, which is a number of between 1 and 56 of Excel's basic colour palette. Then the colour ID, which is a long number and can be it is a way that the numbers are actually stored in VBA underneath. And then the RGB, which is the red, green, blue colour. So similar to if you're mixing paints back at school, you'd mix the colours together. You've got the result of the colour if you mixed 0 red, 255 green, which is the maximum green, and 0 blue in this example to create this bright green colour. So let's look at the code. Okay, so here's the code. First we start with option explicit, as always, which forces us to declare our variables, which is good coding practice in VBA. And here is where we've actually declared the variables and assigned them data types. So you can see we have 2 longs and 3 bytes here, the colour index, the colour ID, and the RGBs. If you've seen the previous video on data types, you should know the maximum number allowed in a long and the maximum number allowed in a byte. If you don't remember what this is, please please review the data types video. Next, we're actually obtaining the colour index here. So Excel actually has a limit of 56 base colours, and this was something that was used to be in the older versions of Excel, that there used to be a maximum of 56 colours, and this is continued on into the latest versions of Excel as the colour index. So they tend to be the base colours. And then we have the dot colour, which is the longer, which can contain RGB values. So a much larger array of colours can be kept within dot colour, but it does require some translation to extract these RGB values. The next bit of code you can just look up and not worry about too much, but this is where we're assigning, we're actually obtaining the red, the green, and the blue from this number, colour ID. So if this number was generated, for a certain colour, the number 30,000, then this would extract the R, the G, and the B from that 30,000 and do a calculation to convert that into the R between 0 and 255, the G between 0 and 255, and the B between 0 and 255, which are the maximums allowed in the red, green, blue colour palette. If you take the combination of those 3 numbers together, you have a vast array of different colour combinations, something we'll explore in a couple later video. Now we have the main part of the code here that we're demonstrating, which is an if statement. So we have actually generate the if statement. If we go back to the code here and we copy and paste, let's say in red, and click the macro get color info, so you'll see this result in B7 is the result of the if statement. So red, green, blue, and then now this should say yellow, but what will happen is it'll say unrecognized color, and this is because there are only 3 colors that we've put in this if statement. So we've said if color index is 3, then the color is red. If the color index is 4, then the color is green. If the color index is 5, then the color is blue. And we've used else if here. So we have an if, and then if it's not, if the color index isn't 3, then we try this, see if it's 4. Then we try this to see if it's 5. And if it's not any of these 3, it will actually say unrecognized color. So if statements can have as many conditions as you want, but as you can imagine, if there are 56 colours in the Excel colour palette, I could continue writing this. So else if, I could continue going else if colour index equals 6, etc, 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 all the way up to 56, in which case we'd have a very long list of colours. But just to demonstrate to you that of how a basic if statement works, we've just gone for the 3 main colours here, and any other colour we've said otherwise, so the last else, range B7, the text is unrecognised colour. And on the last section of the code, we've actually just printed out the colour index, the colour ID, so that long number, it could be a small number or a very large number, and then the calculated red, green and blue that we calculated upon the colour ID based upon this snippet of code that we actually took from Stack Overflow here. So it's very common to maybe be something to get used to is to be perhaps stuck in Excel or in VBA and having to look up some results in Stack Overflow is completely fine. So Googling the result. So for example, I had this colour ID and I needed the red, green and blue, and this was the best solution I could find to obtaining the red, green and blue colour. Although even on this link there are many different options as to how you could create this code, but this seemed the most simplistic. So really we're demonstrating the if statement here more than everything else and setting up the groundwork to move on to other conditionals. So it's if, else, and end if. So when you complete an if statement, you always have to end it in an end if. So that demonstrates if statements, and next we'll look at case statements.